I see thousands of CVs. People send me their CVs, and since I started the blog, I've also. Oh, hi, Amanda. Oh, I've been to Socre. It's such a beautiful city. Um, I've I've seen lots of CVs, and I've also done a lot of research, and I've also hired people. And hey, I don't know what your name is. I don't know how to pronounce that. Okay, hello to Spain. And the mistake is consistently the same. Consistently, I know this might seem like not all that not all that interesting as far as news goes, but I want you to bear with me because the mistake is super simple that most people make, and therefore it's also a fairly simple mistake to fix. It just involves a kind of you have to change your perspective rather than changing your actions. So what most people do is they send me their CV and they're like, "Can you give me feedback on your CV?" Of course I can give you feedback, but that's not the problem. The problem is that the way that you present yourself isn't appropriate to your goals. So today we're going to focus on the goal, which is obviously to get a job, and not just a job, a great job. Because if you've been getting my emails for any amount of time, um, you will you will know that I really believe in getting great jobs. Hi, Jillian. I don't advertise false jobs. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Um, and so, what I want to focus on today is the number one mistake that most of you make, um, and how you can easily fix that. Hi, Kidege. Hello in London. And and the way that you fix that is actually not as complicated as you might assume. You don't need more experience. You don't need another degree. Actually, you definitely don't need another degree. A lot of people, especially when trying to get into international development from another sector, if you have several years of experience and you're thinking, I want to do work that's more interesting, that actually helps people, and you're wondering how you can get your foot in the door. Um, Hey, Amy Carroll, I think you're coming to meet me, so looking forward to meeting you. Uh, they think, okay, I'll either get another degree or I'll do an internship. Often this internship is unpaid, but getting a great job is not about having more experience, and it's not about having another degree or a better degree or even the right degree. There is no such thing. There's just the right candidate. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to join the webinar because I want to make sure everyone gets in from the start of when we go through the slides. Um, but I just want to let you know that it's not about, as most people might think, having some more of something. It's just about presenting yourself in a way that the organization thinks that you are the right person for the job. And that's something else that I really want to stress, which again might not be obvious, is that no matter whether you're applying for a job at the UN, if you got my email from the last week, you saw, yes, I got an interview at the UN. Wow, so exciting. And I'm definitely not above the prestige of the UN. It's any organization that wants you to work with them, very exciting. And then if it's a prestigious organization, it's even more exciting. But that doesn't stop the fact that they're just another employer. It's not. Uh, no one is looking for, a messiah for their organization. They're just looking for an individual who's capable of doing the job and doing the job well. Any questions so far? And please tell me in the chat if you're following, if what I'm saying is clear. It's my first time doing a webinar like this, and I'm really excited to see all of you here from so many different places, but it's something new for me too, so bear with me. Yes. Okay. Please write in the chat if you're following and if what I'm saying is clear. A lot of you have already sent me emails, so it's exciting that you are joining live. And I'm also looking forward to meeting some of you in person and talking to you on the phone this week. Good stuff. Are we ready? Okay, super, Zara. Are we ready to start? Should I go ahead and start the PowerPoint? Super. When your experience is not relevant. Okay, great. I'm going to keep that in mind so I can cover it. And I think one thing I want you to focus on, Kidege, is not thinking about, a lot of people put a lot of stress on themselves, and definitely I've done this too, because we all want to be like the right candidate that gets chosen, on thinking, is my experience relevant? And jobs are not, I mean, employers themselves are not helpful because they write relevant experience in job descriptions. And quite frankly, I think majority of organizations are terrible at writing job descriptions. But the important thing is not to focus on, is your experience relevant, because that's too broad of a question. Focus much more specifically on, what skills are they looking for? What if they say, for example, we need someone who has monitoring and evaluation experience? That's a very specific, hard skill. Um, the other thing you want to focus on is, do you have experience doing what they need you to do? So you want to show them that you can do what they need you to do. So it's, okay, do you have the skills that they need, and then the experience doing it? So if they say, we want experience managing a team, then you might have done that. And let's say you've worked at a pharmaceutical company that's not an NGO generally, but you might have managed a team. So in that sense, yes, it does become relevant. um, is this response, does it make sense? If you just focus on relevant experience, it's kind of too broad and too, I find it's not a helpful way of analyzing the situation. Where you want to focus a little more specifically on, what do they mean by relevant experience, and if you can do a little more research on the organization, what kinds of other people do they hire? So then you get a better idea of what kinds of profiles they hire. You can post in the chat. Is no, age does not matter. For the most part, and we're going to go through this shortly, most employers have in mind a certain kind of profile they want to hire. So one good example, if you've been on my email list for a little while, I mentioned to you, a friend of mine hired me last year he wanted to hire me rather, I didn't end up taking the job, to work at his company. And when he was talking to me about the job, he was saying, we'd like to hire someone who's young. What they meant was, they don't want a 50-year-old. Partly because, hi Danielle, that's great that it works. They don't, so some employers, for reasons that might not be obvious but make sense if you do a little deeper thinking, if you want someone who's a flexible thinker, who's quick, who's going to listen to a lot of orders, who's going to do a lot of busy work like running to make copies or setting up the webinar, which clearly we all need help with, um, they might not want to hire a 50-year-old, because a 50-year-old might not want to actually do that work. So any employer, let's say, the first step is done by HR of just analyzing the CV, unless it's a very small organization. So the next step will be done by the person who's actually going to hire you, the part where they interview you and decide, yes, no, this candidate, no, this candidate, yes. And when they are meeting you, when they're in front of you and analyzing you, they're just wondering, is this candidate going to do what I need him to do? That might be representing the organization, that might be writing policy papers, that might be carrying out a survey of indigenous tomato farmers on the coast of Ecuador. Is this person going to do what I need? If you're 35, if you are 21, if you are 60, they're asking the same question, and the answer that they're looking for is yes. So on average, a lot of 60-year-olds might not be in the physical condition to go running around all day in the hot sun on the Ecuadorian coast, so they might not get hired for the job. But there was actually a movie that came out, I think it was last year, about a guy who gets hired as an intern at the age of 60. So it's not about your age, it's just about whether you can do the job and do it well. I mean, this might sound like a really simple, generic answer, but I can't stress how simple the truth of this is, of how to get a great job. So, Danielle, you can post your questions in the comments, and I will try my best to get to them. Okay. So, unless any of you have other questions, I'm going to get started with this. Like they say, French is desirable. French is desirable. means they would like it if you speak French, and if you don't speak French but you're an excellent candidate, then they'll give you a chance. Best way to present unpaid or volunteer experience, present it as paid experience. There is no difference in terms of unpaid, volunteer, or paid work. What matters is what you got done, aka what your impact was. You guys seem to have a lot of questions that are slowly coming out. So I'm just going to keep answering your questions, and I hope that's helping you. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a volunteer or not. As you know, America was founded on the work of unpaid experience. So, I mean, that's a very, very, very general way of presenting you with the fact that it doesn't matter if you got paid or not. What matters is what you did. So, who cares if you got paid? I mean, you care, obviously, but just present it as the same, as all the same experience. If they ask for a master's degree and you don't even have a bachelor's, you should probably not apply. Why does a job ask for a master's degree? And I think this is actually an interesting question because a lot of people write to me asking if I don't have a master's, should I get a master's? What is the right degree, etc. And this all goes back down to what is relevant experience. So, I mean, let's take a master's as one of the components of the things, or a bachelor's. Let's take a degree or at whatever level as one of the components that they're looking for. So, to focus specifically, Esther, on a bachelor's degree, for example, what they want is someone who is both mentally and mature, in terms of maturity, I mean, mentally and physically able to do the job, and emotionally. So, in the vast majority of cases, they wouldn't want to hire someone who hasn't done a bachelor's degree because it means that they might either be really young or might not have the experience that, or the, what's the right word, they might not have the habits that you develop. So sitting in a lecture listening to someone speak is the same as sitting in a meeting listening to someone speak. I'm not going to make any jokes here about listening to a man speak or whatever, but the point is that they want the things that you have, that you often develop as a result of doing that degree. So one thing that you often develop in a degree is the ability to do teamwork, just because you have to do group projects, especially if you do a degree that is NGO management, international development studies, human rights studies. So they're looking not for the degree, because in the end of the day, a degree is just a piece of paper, but what the degree signifies. So, for example, if they're looking for a master's in something generic like human rights, what they want is that comprehensive academic perspective of human rights. And then they'll say, oh, plus 2 years of experience or 5 years of experience. That means then they have the professional side that they're looking for. And that answers the question, do you know how to apply these questions? If you can prove, so I did have a job where they didn't require any degree. And in fact, this UN job, if you got my email, they didn't require any degree. Because at a certain level, the question becomes not about do you have the right degree or not, it's can you do the job. And I would say that at the end of every interview, every single job application, the question is not do you have the right degree, it's can you do the job. And 9 times out of 10, the degree is just a way to filter candidates, because the majority of candidates who apply without the degree, they might not have the social skills to do the job. They might not have. Another thing that happens for a lot of people, if you grow up in a small kind of homogenous town, then you're not exposed to diversity, which is fundamental to working in an international organization. So a degree can expose you to diversity. Another thing that happens is you get exposed to a lot of ideas that are outside your comfort zone. A lot of, for example, if you grow up in a family or in a society that doesn't discuss, and then you go to university where you're constantly in discussion about different ideas, you get exposed to that. So is this answering your question, Esther? Please write in the chat if it's making sense or not. And anyone else, all of you who are watching, if you have other questions, please post them in the chat. Okay, can you guys see this? I think you should be able to see this. I'm just going to keep it like this so I can still look at the chat. Okay, no one has said no, so I think you can all see this. And I've broken it down into a really simple way of understanding the issue, because a lot of people write to me and they say quite simply that they are not getting interviews and they don't know why. And I just think of it as CV blockers. Um, if you, Rodrigo, you've already taken Get Your Foot in the Door. So I'm just going to explain a little more live about what, what happens when an employer, it could be the UN, it could be a tiny little NGO in the plains of Kenya, it could be a research institute in Geneva. They're all looking for more or less the same thing, which is the right candidate for the job that they have open. In a lot of cases, they're not entirely sure what they're looking for. And we're going to get to that if that doesn't make sense right now. But in case any of you, so Get Your Foot in the Door is about launching a career in international development. It's not, I mean, if you're here and you're here, you have like 15 years of experience in NGOs, it's not the right place. Yes, Chris, I will send out by email the video later on. So to go back to, so to talk about how to get in, it's talking about how to get into international development, and it's not, we're not going to talk about what to do if you are in international development in your board, just to make that clear. What most people forget, which I think when you're starting out, no matter what age you are, because of anxiety, I'm not entirely sure why, but I definitely did this myself when I was first applying to jobs in international organizations, is that I was so obsessed with what I wanted and what I thought I should get and what I needed and what I was not getting and why I was getting rejections. But I want you guys to think a little bit differently and to focus on what these organizations are wanting. So it's kind of like, so imagine having a fight with your best friend, and then you go home and you're like really upset because you had this fight with your best friend. You don't know why it happened. And then you talk to your other mutual friend, let's call him Joe, and you're like, Joe, I had a fight with Christina, and I don't know why I had this fight with Christina, and she was really upset, and then I got upset, and she seemed really worried, and then now she's not talking to me, and I don't know what's going on. And Joe says to you, hey man, she might have just been having a really rough day. You know, her mom is unemployed, and so she's got a lot of stress at home. So just to give you that example, it's really similar. This organization, number one, they're stressed out because they don't have someone in the position that they need to fill. And number two, they need to fill the position and they don't have someone. Do you see what I mean? Hey Nitin, no, you're not very late. We're just getting started with the good stuff. So welcome, and please tell us where you're from. So I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the organization, and I think it's a very cute pun. You know, this is about get your foot in the door and then put yourself in the shoes. Okay, so enough about puns. But we also focused on what we want, like, oh, I want to get paid this much, and I want my job to start in May because you know I'm graduating in March, and it would just be really good timing. Cool, Nitin, welcome. And oh, I want to make sure I have a job with this kind of organization, and I definitely don't want to do this kind of work because that'd be boring. So stop with all of that and focus for just 1 second. If you have a job in mind, if you've recently looked at a position that you think would be really exciting, think about what does that organization want, and if they've advertised the job, if you've seen the posting anywhere, if someone's even told you about it and it's vacant, that means that they have not yet found the person to fill it, right? So that means that they are not 100% sure who the right candidate is. That means you have pretty good chances of getting it. And so you want to put yourselves in their shoes to ask yourself, why haven't they filled this position and what is it that they're really looking for? And as with working in international development in general and getting the right job, especially at the beginning in particular, your the best asset that you could possibly have, and that might seem, again, as I said at the beginning, it might seem like everything I'm saying is obvious, but you have no idea how valuable this is, especially as you get more and more advanced in terms of experience. Passion is absolutely the best asset you could have. Why? Because although it might seem like everyone is passionate about human rights and everyone is passionate about working on peace building strategies in Colombia after the war, it's actually not that common to have passion. Um, contrary to expectations, I would say, I was shocked when I hung out with people who worked at the United Nations, or when I hung out with people who worked at the World Food Program. There's way more cynicism than passion. So cynicism and passion are two sides of the same coin, and that coin is understanding of and interest in an issue. You want to focus on passion, and that's what's going to get you foot in the door. I mean, talking about relevant experience, yes, that's also important. But if you are worried about your experience, if you're worried about your having the right degree or not, then focus on your passion and let that be what drives you. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty. As many of you have written to me complaining about, there are like all these thousands of people applying for jobs, or so it feels like it anyway. And then there's you, and what you want to do is stand out, right? So we're going to talk about what it takes to stand out and why it's not as complicated of a process as you might think. What you want to focus on, as I've been saying, is how to be in what they are looking for. This is not about, okay, a lot of people worry about the thousands of candidates out there. And to be fair, it's not wrong nor incorrect to think about the other candidates that might be applying for a job. It's good to have an awareness. I did not say obsession, I said awareness of your competition. But what you want to focus on is this right here, which is, what are they looking for? What do they want? What do they mean by relevant experience? Do they really need French? Do they not? To be more specific, if there's a job in Cameroon, Cameroon is both a French and English speaking country. So do you really need French? Perhaps not. If it's a job in Cote d'Ivoire, you absolutely need French. So this is what I mean by thinking about what they really want. Guys, please post in the chat to say if I'm clear or not, if you're understanding, and if you have any questions. Because otherwise, I'm not sure if I'm clear enough. Let's move on to, I've put together a very quick three-step formula to figure out if you can get this job or not and how to actually get it. Again, this might seem really simple, but I cannot tell you how many people don't actually do this step, and then they're like, hey, so I had an interview, but I didn't get a call back, and I'm not sure what's happening. Or, hey, so I sent this application, and I think I was really right for the job, but then I didn't get an interview. Or, hey, I found this amazing job. Do you think I could get it? And I'm like, did you follow these steps? And quite frequently, people do not. So the first step is to simply decide what you're looking for. What does that mean? So what most people do, and I think this is the best example, is paid versus unpaid internships. If I ask you, do you want a paid internship? I think most people will say yes. I had one situation where when I was in university, my university gave us a grant, and they gave us $5,000 to go anywhere in the world to intern at anywhere you want. So I didn't really need a paid internship, and ideally I didn't want a paid internship because I didn't want to have defined responsibilities, so that I could kind of do whatever I wanted and mold the project into my own to my own interests. Do you see what I'm saying? If I do want a paid internship, then I only look for paid internships. And if I don't want a paid internship, then I kind of ignore the paid internships and focus on the unpaid internships, because the two offer different possibilities. And while a lot of people complain about unpaid internships, the truth is that they serve a certain purpose, and that's why they exist. If, for example, you have a degree in human rights, you've been dreaming about a human rights job, you've been telling your family about it, and they are now waiting for you to get a human rights job, but you don't exactly know how to do that, then look for jobs that would be the kinds of things you'd like to do and a match with your skills. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide. But what I don't want you to do, which I don't know why people do this. I think I myself did it, and I think it's partly out of sheer desperation and partly not taking enough time to think before we send out an application. But what a lot of people do is they see, let's say, 15 different jobs that seem kind of interesting. They pay, maybe not great, but they pay. They're in countries that, maybe are all right. Like if I don't want to work in Afghanistan, I don't want to work in Chad, then everything else is kind of on the table. But in my own personal case, I mean, this is ridiculous, I know, but I don't really like working in a place where I'm going to be sweating all day long. I like cannot think because it's so hot. But I would keep accepting jobs in hot places like Haiti. Why? I don't know. Because I got the offer and then I didn't think, is this something really sustainable for me? So all you need to do is take just a little more time to analyze what are you looking for. And this is the part where I want you to really go deep on what you want. Don't be shy. If it means eliminating 90% of the offers on Relief Web, that's fine. Do it now rather than after you've already gotten the job offer, or even worse, after you've already started the job. The second thing you want to do, and this comes back to putting yourself in the organization's shoes, is simply to figure out what are they looking for. And this might be a little known secret, but most organizations see this gray circle here. They think they're looking for, let's say, 5 years of experience, French and Spanish desirable, a master's degree in human rights, international development, or similar, which is what they write, and someone who has experience running projects in a large organization. What does that mean? It doesn't tell us anything. What they don't say, which it's highly likely that they want, is they want someone with good analytical skills, someone who's a team player, someone who is relatively easygoing because the organization is quite disorganized. I worked, for example, at a consulting company that worked with NGOs. And since they were not an NGO themselves, they were a private sector organization that worked for profit, and therefore they were quite organized. And if someone didn't do their work, they got fired, because it was a private sector organization, and their focus wasn't having impact, even though that was nice. Their focus was making money. So you see what I'm saying? In that case, that consulting company would want someone who could work quickly. And the way you find that out is by asking yourself, what kind of organization are they? And what are they? And if they're X kind of organization, so in this case, if they're a consulting company, then what are they looking for? And in this version of Get Your Foot in the Door, you have a chart that explains to you everything that the different kinds of organizations, and how you can figure out which kind of organization is for you. So Rodrigo, if you're not seeing it yet, it's because I haven't yet uploaded it. I'll have it uploaded at the end of the week. So just to let you know, that's in there already. And most of the time, we don't even think about what they're looking for. We definitely don't think about what they're really looking for. We're somewhere over here thinking, oh, I really want to be in this gray circle. But like I said, you don't want to be just one among thousands. You want to be at this little intersection, which is what they're really looking for. And if you're following, then you'll see that, they might really want this, and you are just here. You're not trying to fill everything, which brings us to the next point, which is that, so from these, I've put everything in these different colors, and I hope it's clear for you guys. The organization is looking for this gray circle. That's what they say in the job description. That's what, if you're at university and they come to you to talk about what they want, that's what they might tell you. That's what they might say on their website. We're looking for someone who's open-minded, good analytical skills, strong background in economics or finance, for example, if you want to work at the World Bank. And then this is what they're actually looking for. So what they don't say about working at the World Bank is that often you have to work with really large, disorganized sample sizes. So are you a flexible enough thinker that you can deal with large, disorganized sample sizes that are not conclusive data? Maybe if you're used to working in a lab and you have a science background, that might be challenging for you and you won't thrive. So you've got to figure out where you fit, which is a little bit in what they think they're looking for, mostly in what they're really looking for, and something that's neither. So you want to be, I mean, you're not going to be 100% matched to any job. You will evolve to be 100% matched to the job once you start the job, once they teach you what they need you to be, and once you teach them what you're really great at. And it's a process of discovery. The thing that we don't want to do is obsess about being this perfect match that doesn't exist, and focus more on the possibility of being that thing that they really want, that they might not have made so obvious. But if you take the little time, as we talked about in this slide, to first decide what you're looking for, find out what they're looking for by doing a little bit of analysis. So it's making a list. Then you come to a very solid and much deeper understanding of how you can get that job, even though there might well be thousands and thousands of candidates applying for the job. Can you all post in the chat if this is all clear so far and this is all making sense? And the good news is that in the Get Your Foot in the Door course, we talk about this in great detail, about the different kinds of positions that an organization fills and the different kinds of candidates that they look for that is never mentioned on the job description, but is discussed in detail in the course, for one. And then it's kind of those things that are never said because they're obvious to everyone. Okay, great, great. So do you all have any questions so far based on what I've just talked about? If you don't have any questions, then I can talk about what we are going to talk about tomorrow when we will start on time. Any questions, anyone? Okay. Seems like there are no questions so far. So to get to this point, you need to do a list of what? Wait, can you write that question again? Well, just to recap, you need to decide what you're looking for. And this is all broken down in much more detail in the Get Your Foot in the Door course. So you get, in the lessons, it talks about what are the different breakdowns of the positions at each organization, which is, again, never mentioned in the job descriptions because, as I mentioned, organizations don't even know what they really want. And if they do, it's often so much insider knowledge that it's never written down on paper. So you get a breakdown of this in the Get Your Foot in the Door course. So you don't even have to do this thinking. You get a chart that shows you the different kinds of positions, and then you just plug yourself into where you fall. And you can shortcut the fact. Kidege, tell me if I'm starting to make sense. Okay, good. Yeah, what you want to do is start here, because this is like I've put all these little shapes at the end of the week. Yeah, so Rodrigo's already taken this Get Your Foot in the Door course, and so you already have access to the course, right? So I will upload this at the end of the week, which is a chart on how to slot yourself into A, what you're looking for, B, what they're looking for, and then what that means. So it takes the work out of thinking, where do I fit? I don't have a bachelor's, I don't have a master's, they're looking for French, I don't speak French, what does that mean? It's actually a lot simpler. And Kidege, to answer your question, you want to focus on, I don't know if it's clear with my diagram, but this overlap between you and like the creative part of you that is still going to evolve in the job, and then what they're really looking for, and then what they say they're looking for, what they think they might be looking for. So I forget who asked about French, but just to use that French example, a lot of people will say, yes, I want, yes, we want French in our organization, but at the end of the day, a lot of people don't actually speak French. They're just writing it because it might be useful for 20% of the work you might end up doing. So I hope that makes sense. If there are no other questions, I'm going to move on to what we're going to talk about tomorrow. I guess the questions upload a little more slowly. So tomorrow, which is Wednesday, we're going to move on to. So today we talked about what do you need to do in order to understand whether this is a job you can realistically get, and then what is this process to decide is it the right job for you, and what is blocking you from not getting any responses to your CV. And I hope that it's clear for all of you, and I think that it is. The vast majority of candidates, they simply do not do this thinking process because they think, and I think I have myself also to include in that category. I used to think a job is simply me sending out applications and hoping that I get a response. No, a job is a selection process. And so if you're not going through these selection steps, then you're missing half of the half of the ownership of the result. So then if you get a rejection, you can't say, oh, they didn't accept me. Oh, there must be too much competition. No, it's not about that. It's just that you didn't do the pre-paving to the process of getting the job. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to include what you learned in this step and in this step and in this step in your CV. So all you need to know are these 5 components of a winning CV and how to include them in your CV, what to do if you're missing them. So, for example, with French, if they say French is desirable or required and you don't have that, what do you do? Is it desirable? Is it a really required component and should it prevent you from sending out an application in the first place or not? We are going to address that tomorrow in the webinar. And then another thing that I myself have struggled with, and other people have written to me saying that it just takes so long to write a CV, because let's say you do find a job, you feel like you're a perfect match, you've done research on the organization, you really like the idea of working there, but it just takes like a whole day and or night to write your CV. Why is it taking this long? Number one, it does not need to take that long. In Get Your Foot in the Door, you get a detailed guide on how to write your CV, what to include, what not to include. But we will go over tomorrow on how to speed up that process, how to make sure you are not just lagging on that process by wasting time because you're not focusing on the right components. And you'll also get a process on how to write a CV in a way that you can do it the same way every single time. So you don't need to customize a CV to every single job. You can just write a CV and then adjust it a little bit for a different job. And this all goes back to focusing on what you're looking for in a very specific manner. I hope that for all of you who are watching this webinar, I do not want to see you applying to all these jobs that are out there. I want you to get specific and do not be shy on getting specific. It will serve you in the long run. Yes, Sarah, if I have 3 master's degree, how should my CV as I cannot bring to 1 page? I'm sorry, there is never any reason for a 2-page CV. If you have 10 years of experience, that's wonderful. So do I. And I think 10 years of experience is a really excellent asset. What you want to focus on, once again, is not including every single thing you've ever done, but focusing only on what is relevant to the specific job. So again, in Get Your Foot in the Door, this is really broken down in much greater detail. What experience really counts as relevant, one, and how to shorten your CV into only what's necessary. But how long is your CV? Can you post in the chat how long your CV is right now? When people send me CVs that are 3 or 4 pages, honestly, I just look at their name and the last organization that they worked with, and then I close it because I don't have time to read 3 or 4 pages. And someone who's reading 70 CVs a day definitely does not have time to read 3 or 4 pages. If it's 2 pages, oh God, Sarah, you need to make that at the most 2 pages. I do not want to see any 4-page CVs because it's a waste of everybody's time, including your own. It means that every time you apply to a job, you have to edit 4 pages. That's ridiculous. If your CV is 2 pages, fine, but make sure you put the less important information on the second page. So if you won an award for like best student at your university, yeah, it's good to remove information because a CV is not a record of your life. A CV is a tool you use to get your foot in the door. That is its only purpose. You're not trying to be the most honest person you've ever been. You are not trying to be an open book on every single thing you've done in your life. You are simply trying to be the right person for the job. Okay, I'm going to close this PowerPoint if you guys have no more questions so I can see you again. Okay, there we go. Now, oh, you can see me rather. Let's see. Do we have any more questions here? Any of you who joined a little later? Anything that you missed? I'm looking at the chat. So if you have questions, please write them in. You are welcome. It was a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Everyone who's on this webinar, I hope you don't have any more than 2 pages on your CV maximum. I'm always nervous and it seems like my CV doesn't reflect my experience. Hi, Catherine. You guys, a CV is not about you. A CV, we talked about this 5 minutes ago. Your goal when applying to a job is to be the person that they want to hire, not the person you want to present to them. It's being the person they want to hire. So it's kind of like, okay, think about if you meet someone for the first time and you're like, oh, I want to be my real self and I want to be my authentic self. Like, that's great. But at the end of the day, a lot of people simply would not give you a second chance if you don't match the prejudgments. Oh my gosh, these days I speak so little English, I forget sometimes. But we all have these scripts we have in our head. They're like little squares through which we interpret the world. For example, if I grew up in, I did grow up in India, so in my mind, economic disparity is a really normal part of life. So when I go to Switzerland and I see zero economic disparity, I'm like, wait a minute, it's not fitting in my square. It's like, how is there a place without economic disparity? So you see what I mean? We have, Catherine, tell me if you're following, but we all have these little squares through which we're interpreting our world. And the people interviewing you or reading your CV are no different. What you want to do, at least until they give you a job offer or until they have a chance to get to know you better, is just fit into that box. So I once had an interview for a refugee organization. I had connections, it was like a friend of a good friend of mine. I had the right CV, but I made the very stupid mistake. It was a refugee organization, and I was like, I'm not that passionate about refugee issues. I just care more about housing. I'm very passionate about housing. That was the wrong answer because what they wanted was someone who's at least going to say, I'm really passionate about refugees. Now, most refugees are, in a lot of cases, displaced people. It's the same thing as being without appropriate housing. So, but that doesn't go in that little square that they have that says we only want someone who's passionate about refugees, and you have to use the word refugees with the capital R. I hope this makes sense. And this is the same thing as on the other side of this coin of fitting into this little box that organizations have. You also want to make sure that what they do and the way they present themselves fits into the box that you have for how you want your career to look. So it's kind of the same thing. You're just looking at it from 2 different sides, individual or candidate and employer. And you want to make sure that they fit into your box. So while you're at work, you're not thinking this is an unethical organization. I don't believe in the work they're doing. I'm bored. I want to change. I want to quit. I don't want to stay. I don't like it. It doesn't appeal to me. I worked in an engineering organization. I'm not an engineer. I'm not that passionate or very interested by civil engineering, structural engineering. I don't really know the difference between either of them. Even though I could just read Wikipedia. So you see what I mean? It wouldn't make sense for me to work in an engineering organization because it doesn't really attract me. It doesn't really fit into my box of what makes life interesting. And so it wouldn't give me anything. But let's say I have a strong interest in migration. So it would make sense to me to work at a migration organization because it fits in my frame of reference for what are issues that I'm interested in. Okay, any more questions for anyone else who joined late or is just showing up? Please write them in the chat. And if you guys don't have any more questions, then I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. And if you have any questions about a CV, you can either email me before or post them in the chat tomorrow. And I will be happy to answer them either by email or in the webinar. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I hope I got to everything that you all wanted to talk about today. And this webinar is really fun. I think I'm definitely going to do more. Maybe tomorrow's webinar is going to be at the same time. I'm sorry about today starting late. The one day that I really wanted to have internet, my internet didn't work, so I had to get my neighbor's internet. So anyway, all is fixed now. And tomorrow, again, same time, please show up. I think the link should be the same, and if it's not, then I'll send it out by email so you have it. And this is really fun, guys. I'm so glad you all showed up, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow and to telling you more about Get Your Foot in the Door. Okay, cool. Yeah, see you tomorrow, Kadegi. Great, Catherine. Okay, bye everyone. This has been fun. All right. Okay, this is like hanging up on a conversation with someone you really like. You just never know when to hang up. All right, so I'm going to hang up now. And any more questions, you have my email address. And if not, it's malaika@internationalngojobs.com. See you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central European Time. Bye.